You are about to sell your manufacturing business for 8 figures. A successful exit balances your financial payout with the continued stability of the legacy built on the factory floor. With your baseline data in hand, compile your anonymized headcount, map out employee tenure bands, and calculate your estimated replacement costs. Buyers respond to financial risk. We have to frame the protection of your team as a strict economic safeguard for the buyer's investment, instead of a charitable request from an exiting owner. Gallup data shows replacing a frontline worker costs 40% of their salary. This turnover hits the bottom line. The line graph's sharp drop illustrates how losing staff disrupts operations and reduces post-close EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, the buyer's core profitability metric. Keeping your machinists on the floor prevents that drop. Protecting your team is the most effective way to guarantee the buyer's return on investment during the vulnerable transition phase. Now we build the primary legal guardrail. You will ask the buyer to fund a severance pool held in escrow for 6 to 18 months post-close. This pool is typically sized between 0.5 and 1.0% of the total purchase price. This diagram maps out exactly how those funds are deployed. If the buyer terminates a worker without cause, it triggers a baseline payout formula, a minimum of 4 weeks' pay, plus 1 additional week for every completed year of service. You must also account for state-mandated layoff notices, like the California WARN Act. On our payout path, insert a WARN offset clause. This structural filter deducts state-mandated penalty payments from the escrow payout, preventing the buyer from double paying severance and statutory penalties simultaneously. The escrow pool creates a concrete financial penalty. It forces the buyer to absorb the true cost of turnover, actively discouraging them from initiating hasty headcount or pay cuts in the first year. Step 3 targets your specialized hourly staff. We lock them in using retention bonuses set between 5 and 15% of their base pay. You stage these payments strategically to keep the floor stable. Payouts are typically split 50-50, with half delivered on the closing date and the remaining half at the 12-month mark. There is a strict tax requirement here. These bonuses must be treated as supplemental wages, compliant with IRS Section 409A short-term deferral rules. Section 409A regulates non-qualified deferred compensation, imposing heavy penalties if payment timing rules are violated. Next, we secure your leadership team. You will direct your counsel to draft 12 to 18-month fixed-term agreements for your key managers. Inside those agreements, tightly define terms like gross negligence or specific base pay cuts. Clearly defining cause and good reason guarantees your manager's severance is paid. Locking in both the machinists on the floor and the leadership in the office stabilizes your operational hierarchy when the business is most vulnerable. Sometimes a buyer will completely refuse to pre-fund a severance escrow. If that happens, we pivot to an alternative negotiation lever. This alternative is called the stability earnout. You tie a percentage of your final purchase price to a clear metric. The buyer must maintain a minimum of 95% of the original headcount and 100% of baseline compensation for the first year. This graphic breaks down the 2 distinct approaches. On the left, a severance pool acts as a punitive guardrail, punishing cuts. On the right, the earnout functions as a positive, reward-based incentive for keeping the team intact. Shifting to a reward system disarms private equity firms and buyers who are highly anxious about being handcuffed by rigid operational mandates. By preparing both a penalty framework and a reward framework, you can adapt to the buyer's specific financial anxieties without sacrificing your employees' security. We must address post-close enforcement. A signature is meaningless if your protected employees lack the legal authority to enforce these financial terms. To fix this, instruct your counsel to draft narrow third-party beneficiary rights. These specific clauses grant your employees the legal standing to enforce their payment directly, while strictly blocking them from disrupting the broader asset purchase agreement. Once signed, execute a disciplined internal communication strategy. Maintain strict confidentiality until the deal officially closes to prevent rumors and operational disruption. Prepare exact day-one talking points for the announcement. Explicitly outline the negotiated retention bonuses and the exact job security guardrails directly to the staff. A legally airtight document is entirely useless if poor communication causes your highly skilled workforce to panic and quit before the transition even begins. You now possess a complete data-backed term sheet, combining severance pools, retention bonuses, and stability earnouts. Your next step is handing this playbook to your M&A advisor and transaction counsel to draft the official letter of intent and asset purchase agreement. The Asset Purchase Agreement, or APA, is the primary contract detailing the legal terms of the sale. You built an enduring legacy with your team over decades of early mornings and late nights. You now have the framework to protect their future. Your legacy is defined by the security you've provided to the workforce, ensuring the shop continues to thrive long after you've walked away and deposited your final proceeds.